Okay, let's dive into some more of your questions. I know that the hug from behind in Still was supposed to be a face-to-face hug, and I think Norman said in an interview that he was the one to propose the change and said it would have been a more powerful for the hug to come from behind. Do you think he did that because of Daryl's scars and so his past? Like Beth literally hugged his scars in a certain way? You know, I've actually never heard that before, that Norman was the one who proposed that to be the change. And I'm not saying it's not true. I've just never heard that before. But it could be. We know that he is the one who changed from Daryl cutting himself and then in them to burning himself. So they definitely listened to his ideas. And yeah, it very well could be. The other thing is that the way the hug was, she was kind of laying her cheek against the left wing of his vest. And that's become a powerful symbol as well. So I would think, even if it was Norman's idea, that Gimple and the writers were probably behind it because of the power of the symbolism. So even if they didn't think of that at first, they might have been like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea because it works with, you know, X, Y, and Z. So I don't know. I don't really know the answer to that because I haven't heard that before, but that's kind of cool if that's true. And I like that. And I think it just worked out all around, don't you? So yeah, thanks for sending that in. Okay. I was rewatching season 3, and then in episode 6, there's a scene where Daryl talks to Carl, and they have a conversation about their moms. I think there's some interesting things mentioned in Daryl's story about his mom. He mentions he runs to the house because he hears sirens, everyone's looking at him, and then he mentions fire trucks everywhere, aka the fire truck that disappeared after 508. And then he says she was burnt to nothing, maybe referencing the house they burned together. You know, she was just gone. That line hit me. Made it seem like it wasn't real, aka Beth actually being alive. Then I remembered that some time ago I saw a deleted scene of season 3 where Beth is comforting Carl about his mom and they have a talk. I did not find any interesting stuff in that, but maybe I missed something. Anyway, this deleted scene connects to 305 where Daryl says to Beth, "Kid just lost his mom, his dad ain't doing so hot," and Beth says, "I'll look out for him," which is basically the very first real interaction we see them have. Maybe I read a bit too much into that, but maybe it actually means something. No, I don't think you're reading too much into it at all. And this is something that other TDers have talked about. It's not always the biggest deal or anything, but we've mentioned it. I mean, I like to say that even if they weren't necessarily planning things, which I think as of season 3 they were, but even say they weren't yet, Gimple likes to go back to earlier episodes and mine them for symbolism. So, like I said, even if they weren't planning it yet, he could go back to this conversation and be like, okay, fire trucks, we can use that. She's just gone. Okay, we can use that. You know what I mean? So they have this arc where specifically the women in Daryl's life tend to leave him. And that's not to say that Beth is just like his mom or anything like that, but this is a real thing that he struggles with. He lost his mom early on. He lost Beth. He lost Leah. Didn't pan out searching for Sophia. All of that plays into it. Even though he has different types of relationships with these women, he still always seems to be abandoned by them or looking for them. And that actually is why... So in season 7, we had Carol go to the cabin to live by herself, and Ezekiel knew where she was, but Daryl didn't for a while. To him, she just took off. And when he found her, he was really upset. And when Norman did an interview about that episode, he said that Daryl is literally thinking, "Mommy, why did you leave me?" I mean, he has an abandonment complex. And, you know, that's how we can tell that he thinks of Carol as a mother or a mother figure, because he speaks of her like a mother. So yeah, I mean, I don't mean to, I'm kind of getting off track here, but I definitely think that they took this conversation and they sort of harvested symbols from it, and then they've used them again and again with Beth. And so we can definitely connect it to her and her arc. There was another one that I read, I think yesterday, that talked about too, the fact that we have Beth and Daryl, you know, looking after Carl and looking after Judith, baby Judith. And I think it all is related and that it was all done very purposefully. The other thing I will say, though, is that season 3 was known for being kind of a mess behind the scenes. The showrunner was fired for killing characters off without direction. Both Andrea and Merle were originally supposed to survive into season 4, and they didn't. And it was because the showrunner was just all over the place, and that's why AMC got rid of him. But Gimple has been a junior writer since season 2, so I kind of tend to think that this is him putting in symbolism. And I love the idea that everybody else was like and by everybody else, I don't mean the actors. I mean, like, the showrunner and, you know, AMC, they were fighting over things about where the show was going. And so everything else behind the scenes was kind of a hot mess. Meanwhile, Gimple was just like really quietly slipping in symbolism and working on his little arcs. And then when he became showrunner, he was able to bring them all to the forefront and really make it come together in a cohesive way. And I just love the idea of thinking about him being sneaky like that back in season 3. So, I'm not sure that I can tell you exactly what it all means or exactly how it's all related, but it is related, and we just kind of keep an eye on it. And again, once we get the full story and she returns and we see where it's going, I think the full picture will come into view. And right now we kind of just have pieces and strands of it. But I'm glad you picked up on that, because yeah, that line, she was just gone. I mean, that's almost exactly what Daryl says to Rick in A, which is 416. He says she's just gone. So yeah, I think that was very purposeful. So good on you for picking that up. Next one, random thought. When Daryl meets Noah and he finds out she's really there, you seen a blonde girl, that line warms my heart, LOL. Then Noah says her name, and the look on Daryl's face, he was obviously happy and surprised, maybe shocked, like he didn't really have high hopes. And then hope returned to him. I don't know. But I think it connects to his character on another level. Like Norman said, Daryl is always trying to help people or find people, but it never works out. Like with Sophia and Merle, here he thought he actually found her and it would have been different than the previous times, and maybe it eventually will be different. Yeah, I think so. So I just talked about this in the previous Ask about how he's always searching for people, right? And they tend to leave him. So it's almost like he has to break that cycle. He needs to find her and be able to, I don't want to say keep her, that sounds a little bit weird, but for her not to be taken away from him or abandon him, to actually have success in finding someone. And I think that's too why he searched for Rick so hard, is he was just so sick of losing people and not being able to find them again. So he just kept looking. And I think that he'll finally be able to end. It's almost like a saga of, what do you call it? Like a self-fulfilling prophecy. And it just happens again and again and again. And he needs to get out of that loop. And I think he finally will once he finds Rick and Beth again. So yeah, I definitely think it will be different. And I agree about the look on his face. I think he was shocked. I don't know that he was not hopeful, but I think it was more like, you know, when you find something out, you kind of get infected with this urgency, like, okay, she's there. We know she's there. We got to go get her right this second, you know, and I think that's kind of more what he was doing. But it was also a matter of they didn't know for sure that that's where she was. They were assuming because of the cross on the car, but, you know, she could have been taken there and then taken someplace else. They really didn't know she was there until Noah confirmed it. So it was also that. But yeah, I really like that observation. Thank you. Okay, something that was bugging me in season 5 before he saw the black car is that Daryl didn't really talk or think about finding Beth, except for 501 when we hear him say to Maggie that she's alive or something like that. And yeah, the car goes by and he immediately goes after it, but that's obviously for plot purposes. Why do you think he didn't just keep looking with the group? Maybe because they didn't have any trace or hints of where the car might have gone? It's probably a stupid question, but I don't know, it seems a bit off to me. No, it's not a stupid question, but I think what you said is the answer. It's because he didn't know where to look for her. And it actually shows a lot of faith on Daryl's part, because he never got super depressed about it. I mean, yeah, we see him sitting down in the road and he looks really depressed when the claimers find him. But I think that was more being exhausted and then just the fact that it had just happened. But he was very hopeful in talking to Maggie and saying, no, she's alive. I don't know where she is, but she's alive and we're going to find her. I think it was just a matter of he was waiting for some hint of her. And then there was the fact that everything else was going on. I mean, they had to get out of Terminus. They were all trapped in a boxcar. He was happy to have found Michonne and Rick and Carl again, you know. I think it's more of a logistical thing with a show like this when you have a lot of characters and a lot of storylines and a lot going on. It's not that Daryl didn't want to look or that he wasn't thinking about it. It was just that they weren't focusing on that because there were other things going on in the present that they had to address first. And, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, you could even see it maybe, I mean, I guess it will depend on how it all plays out, but you could almost see it as a foreshadow because he, other than telling Maggie that, like you said, at the very beginning of 501, he didn't really mention it. He wasn't really doing much about it because he was dealing with other things that had to do with the rest of the group. Well, after Coda, we kind of saw the same thing for many seasons. He didn't talk about her and he didn't do anything about it. And we're kind of still in that space. But once he finds out that she's alive, I think he's going to just lunge right into action and there's not going to be any stopping him from going after her. So maybe that's a bit of a foreshadow too. I don't know. But I don't think it's so much that it's off. Like you said, it's just like the way the show was and the way the show had to play out, that they had to wait to address that because there was too much going on at Terminus and they needed to get everyone to a point where they could take a breath and then they could bring in the story of him going after Beth. So, but yeah, interesting question. I can understand why Maggie really wanted Negan dead. Herschel, her father, Beth, and Glenn were all taken away from her while she was powerless to do anything to prevent it nor help them. Not only that, she didn't get to avenge any of their deaths. The governor beheaded Herschel, Officer Don Lerner or someone else accidentally shot Beth in the head, and Negan bashed Glenn's head ruthlessly and mercilessly. Negan is the only person Maggie has come the closest to for avenging one of her loved ones' deaths. When Rick took that opportunity away from her when he spared Negan's life, rightfully so as he was just honoring his son's wishes, Maggie felt betrayed. She didn't get to finish off the governor. Michonne, and Lily as well, Tara's sister, finished the job. Did. She didn't get to confront, nor does she even know who Beth's shooter is, and she was very close to avenging at least one person's death left among her loved ones. But Rick took that away from her. If she had been the one to approach the governor in his dying death and finish him off instead of Lily, if she came face to face with whoever Beth's shooter was, and if Maggie ended the Savior War with taking Negan's life in 816, then maybe or most likely there wouldn't have been a rift between Hilltop and Alexandria at all, even after the whole Jocelyn thing. Maggie would have understood why Michonne did what she did if Maggie was given the opportunity that was supposed to be hers. Maggie deserves so much better from TF, and especially Rick. He was present in all of her loved ones' deaths. Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not sure exactly what you're asking here, but I don't disagree. I mean, I think in her case, anybody would want to avenge that death and want him dead. But then, like you said, too, in Rick's case, his son had just died, and he wanted to honor Carl's wishes. So, I mean, this is just the nature of war and of human beings. You're not going to be able to please everybody, and there are always going to be someone at odds, and it's going to be understandable on both sides. You know, you certainly understand Maggie's point of view. You certainly understand Rick's point of view. And then there's the fact that Negan, because he survived, has actually saved Team Family more than once. And so it becomes really an interesting question of what if they had killed him, right? I think it'll be really interesting where it goes with Dead City. As I put in some of my analysis, they kind of made Negan King of Babylon. And I think that's going to be a foil to Rick, who's obviously going to attain some sort of leadership again because, you know, he's Rick and that's what he does. So the whole thing of the two of them facing off in all-out war is going to be mirrored again on a much bigger stage where the stakes are going to be higher and they're going to be going head-to-head again. It'll just be interesting to see what's going on because I was one that kind of wanted Negan to die at the end of season 8. But since then, I can kind of see what they're doing and that they're planning something bigger. So it'll be interesting. It'll just be interesting to see where it goes. But yeah, I really like your thoughts here. And I think you're right. I think all of your observations are correct, but they're just setting up the story in a particular way to lead us somewhere. And we're just, waiting around to see where it goes. I cannot wait for the Beth is Alive reveal to come, and all of the Beth merchandise will be available for purchase that she should have gotten long after Coda aired. I'll be buying one for myself. Yeah, I hope that's true. Some of the companies have gone under that was originally doing the merchandise, so it'll be interesting what they come out with for that. And I think that we're just going to see Beth and Daryl stuff all over the place once this actually happens. So yeah, I'm with you. I am down for all the Bethel merchandise. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up there for today. I'll be back later with more.